Hey there, it's Jacqueline from the Fable Tree. Today we are designing a simple boho style keychain, and I'm going to start just with my rectangle tool here. All right, and if you have a different shape or a line segment popping up instead, just click and hold and drag over the shape that you want. I'm going to just click because I want to input specific measurements, but you could certainly just click and drag if you want to kind of eyeball yours. I'm going to go 4 inches wide and 1.25 inches high. And then before I go any further, I want to go to View and turn on my grid. So View Show Grid and also View Snap to Grid. All right, let's talk about why I want to do that. First of all, it makes it really clear that I still have a fill in my shape and I don't want that. All right. On a blank background with no grid, it can be easy to think, oh, I've got an empty fill there. No big deal. Well, the Glowforge interprets that as a fill, not as empty. So we need to go turn that fill to empty instead of white. All right, so that's step one. The next thing it can do, so let's go ahead and use our select tool here. You can scooch with your arrow keys, and since we turned snap to grid on, it's going to move it over a whole 1/8 of an inch with every arrow touch, or arrow key, whatever. All right, and that is helpful in some cases and not helpful in other cases. You'll kind of figure out if you go to try to design, and in fact, when we create our word that goes on top of this, you'll see why we might want to turn this off in some circumstances. So we'll get there. All right, I aligned my rectangle vertically, kind of centered over a 1 inch block. You can do that if you'd like. It just makes it easier visually for me when things are more balanced. Now I'm going to go ahead, oh wait, before I do that, I'm going to take this little dial, you can choose any of them on the corner, and just round my rectangle. I don't want a sharp cornered rectangle as a keychain. That just seems like you're asking to get scratched when you reach into your bag for your keychain. So I'm going to do about a 0.14 inch radius rounding, but you can change the radius to where it looks good to you. We're not going to worry about our keychain hole yet. We'll get there. At this point, I want to start scoring our back pattern. Now I can just look at this and see, okay, this is the center line. It's one reason that I chose these dimensions so that I didn't have to worry about like part of an 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to hold down Shift, which will keep it nice and flat without me having to focus or concentrate at all. Okay, and let me show you what happens if you don't have Shift. You might come off or off. Okay, not such a big deal when you've got your snap to grid on, but it can be a little trickier if you don't. Okay, let's go ahead and change this line segment color to green, or whatever color you use to indicate to yourself, oh, this is a score instead of a cut. All right, and now we're going to create the sort of arrowy shapes. I'm going to start here at the very end of the keychain. I'm going to hold down Shift so that it makes it a perfect 45-degree angle. All right, and now you'll see that it intersects with that line, it intersects with this line. Instead of just continuing to draw the lines, I'm just going to copy paste. You can do whatever you want. And I want you to, or what I'm doing is spacing my lines 1/2 inch apart. Okay, so the beginning point of each line is 4 of these little 1/8 inch grid squares, so 1/2 inch. I'm going to keep doing that. And once I have a couple of them, let's see, 1, 2, I keep thinking it should be this far apart, so maybe I should have done 5/8, but we're going to stick with 1/2 inch. Now that I've got 4 of them, I'm just going to copy and paste all of them at once, just to save myself a little bit of time. And then you'll see that this last segment kind of sticks out a bit. We don't really want that, so let's grab the end. You can hold down Shift if you want, but it's pretty simple to just make it, since we've got our snap to grid on, it's pretty simple to have it just continue that. Now that I have all of these where I want them, I'm going to copy. Note that I dragged to select all of these diagonal lines, but not the horizontal center line. Okay, I'm copying, which on my Mac is a Command C. If you're using a PC, it would be Control C. And then I'm going to go Edit, Paste in Place. So it pastes it right on top of where it was copied from. And then you can use either this flip vertically, or you can come up to Object, Transform, Reflect, and do it that way. All right, just so that if you don't have this panel like I do, you can still figure it out. And then I'm just going to scoot it on down using my arrow keys until it's in place. Now we have a pretty cute scored backing for our boho style keychain. Are you already thinking about how maybe this could be used on a larger sign instead of a keychain? It sure could. Okay, before we go further and add our word, I want to take a minute and create our keychain hole, or keyring hole, using the ellipse tool. You can do about a 0.2 by 0.2 inch circle, and I'm gonna just show you a little struggle that you might have, okay? It is, it's not gonna, you see the center line here? That is not going to end up on one of our little grid lines, which is really what we want because our center line is on a grid line. Oh, so annoying, right? So you can either turn off Snap to Grid, or you can do this. Let me show you. I'm going to zoom out so everything's in the picture. I'm going to select all of this, but not that, okay? And go to Object, Group. Then I'm going to select everything and vertical align center. All right, and then just kind of scooch it up so we're back on our grid line while everything is selected. Okay, that vertical align center. If you don't have this little bit over in your properties panel, you can go to Object, Align, Vertical Align Center instead. Okay, now before I scooch it onto the keychain, I'm going to turn it black because we actually do want that cut instead of scored. And you can just put it wherever it makes sense for you. I think that looks pretty good to me. And ordinarily, I would go, you know, if this were a larger piece that I was cutting out, I would worry about removing this score line from right in here. But I honestly do not care if the cutout hole from my keyring has a score line across it. So I'm not going to bother. You can bother if you want. So now I'm going to write a word, and let me just kind of give you a sense of what this will look like at the very end. I'm going to have this keychain made out of wood. I think I'll do, I haven't decided yet. I think I'll do a white oak. And then I'm going to cut the word out of a pastel acrylic. And then I'm going to glue it down with 3M adhesive. All right. So it's going to look a little chaotic on here, but it'll look really nice as on the actual wood. All right. So I'm just going to write the word adventurer. You can use whatever word or name makes you happy. And I'm going to use Wild Mango font. But even more than that, I'm actually going to use the glyphs. If you have not explored glyphs for fonts, you should. So I'm going to come up to Type, open the glyphs panel, and then check it out. Let's just see what glyphs are available for the A. Oh, well, I should probably start at the beginning of the word if I'm going to do that. Here we go. You can click and hold, and it'll show you the available options for the letter that you're using. Okay, and you can see that here too. So let's get rid of the plain V and use an exciting V. I want to caution you against overuse. Okay, so you'll notice that it does have options for glyphs for the D and the E as well, but I find if you use the glyph for every single letter where it's available, it can be a lot. And yes, sometimes that's what you want. You want a lot, but sometimes you don't. So just use your glyphs judiciously, and you don't have to use it on every other letter or whatever. There's no really rule about it, but just give it some thought, test it out. I'm playing around here as I talk to you about this. And I think this one has some cool, there we go, I like that. And it's that one. And then I'm going to do one of the R's and not the other R. Oh, wait, click and drag onto it. Do we like that? Should I do the other R? I think I'll leave it like this for now. Okay, so once you're happy with your glyph arrangement and your letters and your font and all that good stuff, you can make it larger. I want you to put it on the actual backing. And I don't want you to necessarily just center because you've got this hole here. And so that's going to visually shift things over a bit. All right. And wouldn't it be easy if we could just do that? Now, you'll notice I'm having a little trouble. I keep trying to just scooch it and make it automatically align perfectly and be placed where I want it to be. But we have that snap to grid on, and it really does make it a bit complicated. So I'm going to go ahead and go to View, Snap to Grid, turn that off so that I can make finer adjustments. See, now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now it's letting me make much finer adjustments. So Again, it can be a little chaotic looking at this point in the file because you've got these dark green lines, you've got this dark line here, you've got this dark stuff, but it's not all going to look like that when you're using your actual material. So try not to get overwhelmed. And here we go. Do I like that? I will say that if you're kind of worried about making things perfectly centered, but you don't want to, get thrown off by this, you can make a rectangle and kind of put it right at the end of this and that, and just kind of take it over to the end. I've done this a lot actually. And then up all the way, down all the way. I'm going to change it to a stroke just so I can see what I'm selecting. And then use your select tool, select that as well, and go ahead and just align it, and then move it back to where you want. And now you're basically centering it within the usable space of the keychain instead of the whole outer shape. Does that make sense? If not, don't worry about doing it. Just place it where it looks nice to you. Okay, so I like the placement for this. This is nice for me, but we're not going to engrave this word on the background, although you could and it would look magnificent. We're doing more of a 3D kind of deal. So I'm going to first, before I go any further, right click and create outlines. My computer is lagging a little bit because I have too much stuff going on. Okay. And if you used a script font here, make sure you come over to the Pathfinders panel and click that Unite button so that you don't have a struggle with your script cutting out too much. Okay, now I'm going to copy and paste. I always like to keep an original copy pasted version when I do this. I'm actually going to score. I'm really terrible at eyeballing letters when I put things down. And so what I'm going to do is score placement guidelines onto the back of my keychain. All right, and that way when I cut out all of these down here, and in fact you can go ahead and change that to a stroke so that you're ready to go, I am going to be able to, kind of put it just exactly where the lines are scored, and it makes things a lot easier. So object path, offset path. Obviously we don't want to point to larger score line because it'll be very visible. So we want to do a negative, and I like a negative 0.04. That's a lot for this very small piece. So we'll do a negative 0.02. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and select that green color. That's my score color. And then I'm also going to go ahead and switch that from fill to stroke. Okay. And now I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click here. It's going to select your outer bit and your inner bit. So go ahead and object ungroup. Okay. Now I want you to click on this this black filled bit. And yes, you could go in and select each of these individually and just do it letter by letter by letter. But I don't want you to have to live like that. So as long as you know for sure that you have selected that part you want to delete, you can go to select same fill color and delete it all at once. All right. And now you have scored placement lines that are slightly smaller than the cutout words, which is important because then your cutout letters, your score lines won't be visible once you glue things down. And if you're anything like me, you might be looking at these little thin bits on your font and being a little bit worried that it's going to be too thin. And I am a little bit worried it's going to be too thin. So I'm going to do the same thing, but actually do a 0.02. I'm going to do that, yeah. And well, maybe a 0.01 because I just don't want my my font to be too flimsy. Okay, and I'm actually going to just select all of that and unite just to kind of get that inner line to go away. I'm happy with this. It's not going to look quite so thick once it's cut out because you have to realize that the laser removes some material as it cuts. I'm going to object ungroup this just so I can move this slightly apart. I don't want my letters here to get, I just want to make sure that there's enough space that we're not melting our acrylic, So do what you need to do. Any parts that look too close to you, just scooch them apart a bit. And now you have a beautiful file. So what I will do at this point is take this bit and copy paste it into a new document so that I can cut it out of my acrylic, Caution that if you're using mirrored acrylic, which would be super cute, go ahead and reflect it, not that way, reflect it vertically, and cut it from the back of your mirrored acrylic. So pro tip there, but I'm not, so there we are. All right, I would love to see your final picture. So if you make a boho style keychain, even if it doesn't say adventurer, maybe it says a name or some other beautiful phrase or saying, if you make a big sign with the same technique, whatever, I would love it if you would share that with me either on Instagram or Facebook. I'm the Fable Tree pretty much everywhere, and you can email it to me, Jacqueline@thefabletree.com as well. All right, go ahead and like and subscribe this video if you found this helpful, and I will see you next week.